All right, people. Let's Hello world. How's everyone doing today? Here we are. We find ourselves once again on YouTube. This evening we will be joined by a very special guest. Her name is MK. It is another dominatrix who is friends with the last dominatrix I spoke with, Ashley Olsen, if you recall that from a couple weeks ago. I had a lot of fun talking with Ashley. She was really. Oh, I should move this closer. Sorry. I had a lot of fun talking with Ashley. She's a very kind of strange and interesting person, but also I found her very, yeah, just I don't know, intriguing and easygoing and fun to talk with. So I was naturally curious also to possibly talk with her podcasting partner, whose name is MK, and I believe she's also a dominatrix, but I know much less about her. I actually just recorded a podcast with them last night, and yeah, they seem to have a similar kind of vibe. But I said, I don't know anything about her, so I was curious. And this week, I've been spending a lot of time kind of mapping out and preparing emails to send a shitload of invitations to a bunch of cool people. But since I'm doing that work this week, I've my time management could have been a little bit better. I could have got some. I was slow to get people to talk with me actually this week. So last night I did a podcast with them, and I said, "Hey, want to talk with me sometime in the next few days?" And she obliged. So yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting her and chatting with her. I presume that we'll talk about things like, uh, her politics and the politics of sex work, and um, you know, their place in the kind of internet ecology and my place, and trying to sort out, you know, these weird terrain that we're all kind of inhabiting on the internet today. So, the typical themes that I usually ask people about, I'll, probably ask her about those also. So I think that's enough of an introduction. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in the news that the news of my projects anyway, that I want to share real quick. Um, oh, I got my hands on this massive data set from a company called College Pulse. They've been collecting all of this survey data from university students, and it's some pretty awesome data. It's like what they do is they give students like coupons and little rewards or whatever to answer questions on a phone app, and they have so many questions, and like thousands and thousands of students take these surveys. So they were looking for researchers to do analysis of it, and a friend of a friend kind of invited me to do it, or nominated me or whatever. And yeah, so they gave me this incredible data set. It's like thousands of university students answering hundreds of questions, and it's going to be really fun. So I have some really good, I think, kind of quantitative analyses of, because they have a bunch of questions about basically like the questions I'm interested in around, people's attitudes towards free speech, and who exactly are these university students who are, increasingly kind of paranoid and panicky around free speech issues. I'm really interested in understanding who exactly they were, or who exactly they are. What are the correlates of those beliefs on university campus? And now we have this massive data set that's going to provide a lot of opportunities for some fascinating analyses. They have questions about personality factors. They have questions about basically IQ measures. They have all of these other markers of lifestyle and mental health, and yeah, just it's a cornucopia of data on university students, including their attitudes towards politics and free speech and all of that stuff. So I'm going to be analyzing that over the next couple of weeks. I've already started, and there's going to be some really good stuff coming out of that. So that's what I've been working on a lot today. Anyway, so that's about. I think we'll leave it at that, and I'll bring on Mrs. MK right now. Hang tight. All right, I need a better workflow where I send that link out without having to get up and leave the frame, but whatever. All right, so I sent her the link. She should be joining us any minute. I told her to take her time. It's no big deal. Oh, so this week was kind of exciting because we did our first round of seminars. I've mentioned on here before that I'm kind of experimenting with a small seminar project where for patrons of my show and everything, I basically do a kind of 2-hour focused small group virtual meetup thing where people get to present their own work and talk about their own ideas and try to develop them over time with my support and with the group support or whatever. And yeah, it was, I thought, really good. I mean, I would love to hear from the other people, but yeah, I'll tell you more about it later. Here we are, joined by
I am not getting sound.
MK. You sound all right to me. Can you hear me okay?
One moment. I'm going to have to...
The anticipation. Someone in the chat the other day was giving me shit for my receding hairline. And now I can't help but notice it whenever I do live streams. I don't think it's that bad, but whatever. You get old. I don't care. I'm going to lose my hair eventually. What do I care? I'm at peace with my aging. Are you just chilling or are you getting set up still, MK? Whoa, there's two of you.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yes.
Great. Let me make sure that it's actually using the right microphone. Does my microphone sound good or does it sound like shit?
You sound perfect. It shows a first name. I hope that's okay.
What's the first name?
Starts with A.
Is it Angel?
Yes. Is that top secret to the world?
No, it's not top secret at all.
Okay, great. I'm always afraid of people accidentally doxing themselves on my show.
I think that doxing is good.
Yeah. Voluntary or even forced?
Both. And in fact, we encourage, like on girls chat, I don't know if you've introduced me or like what you've said about me.
I gave a little bit, but yeah, go on.
We encourage people to dox themselves on girls chat and or to there's we're not, let's just say we're not going to throw out the idea of doxing people live.
Okay. Interesting. That's pretty gutsy.
It just you gotta run with the cultural moment.
Now,
people
even
love
though
being doxed, people love being canceled.
People do love being canceled. You're right. Getting doxed can be good for your brand in many ways.
Absolutely.
Even though you seem to keep a pretty, private front. Is that fair to say? You're a little mysterious about who you are.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you're kind of like Ashley in the sense that I'm looking at a photo of a person, but I'm not, I don't know if that's supposed to be you or if that's someone else or if it's highly, photoshopped and you have mysterious names like MK. These are all just, it's all good. I have no problem with it. But one gets a sense that there is a kind of public digital layer or veneer between your true self and what we see. Is that fair to infer, or am I wrong?
There are actual photos of me on the internet. There are actual photos of me on the internet where my face is visible, including my avatar. There have been for a number of years, so I have a digital footprint on the internet. I'm less, Ashley, I feel like more kind of came out of nowhere with this preformed concept, this and of how Ashley wanted to portray their brand. Whereas I think that I've just been posting online for a long time, to be quite honest.
Okay. Maybe you could tell me more about that background. I'm curious, how did you first get into being an e-celeb?
Being an e-celeb?
When did you catch your break as an e-celeb?
I wouldn't call myself, I don't self-identify as an e-celeb.
That's probably good.
And I feel like there have been moments where I think that I have definitely had more of a personal brand than I do now. I don't really develop my own personal brand at the moment because at this point in time, I'm less interested in myself as something to brand and more interested in curating conversations, curating other forms of media. And I see that, and I think that that's a lot of what have kind of been doing online, I think behind the scenes in some ways, and also with the podcast Girls Chat in the past like year or so.
So how would you describe the mission of your podcast Girls Chat?
The mission?
Or just from your perspective, what are you trying to do with it, would you say?
I would like to dominate beta males.
Verbally?
I would like to take their money. That's one form of domination.
Right. That see, I'm learning. This is called FinDom, right?
Well, financial domination, I think, is something very, very, very interesting and complex. In that, of course, in a financial domination situation, the person is objectively giving up more real power than they are in most other like BDSM type role play or scenes. Like, if you're tied up, chances are you have a safe word and you can just say, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Whereas when you've given someone some chunk of money, that's like labor that you've done in your life, and it now belongs to someone else and you never get it back. But at the same time, I think that a findom has a kind of or fin sub rather, has a kind of consciousness of themselves as a consumer. And so it gives them the kind of the entitlement of a consumer. And so the fin sub inevitably tops from the bottom.
Okay.
But I do want money. Cash for girls. That was a Freudian slip. Chat for girls, girls chat, wants money from worthless men who are aware that they have very little to offer, if not the world, then women, or who are just insecure in their own identities as males.
So,
and we want them to give us money.
okay. Well, I appreciate how frank you are about that. What percentage of your audience would you say are these kind of beta males?
It's hard to say. You know, I don't know that we get like reliable. You know how like with like Twitter you can kind of break down like how your followers into metrics like salary and gender and all that stuff. You can look at that.
Mm-hmm.
That's like information that you can get.
Right.
I don't know if Patreon offers that. None of them really offer any kind of like psychosexual analysis or evaluation of like the masculinity of like the male. Like the demographic sheet will just it'll be like a bar graph and it'll say like men and women. It won't say like it won't be broken down into subcategories.
Mm. Right. So you're not sure?
Yeah, it's impossible to say.
But surely
Like,
you have some sense from the interactions that you receive, right?
well, also I think that like with the way that technology is going,
Mm-hmm.
that pretty soon social media platforms, digital platforms, will have the ability to determine a person's sexual pathologies just using algorithms
Mm-hmm.
without even like that person necessarily even having to consume any sexual content or type any sexual content into the computer just by like analyzing that person's content and things of that nature.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Someone in the chat, Samantha, says that she admires your voice, and I was also independently kind of reflecting on how you speak in a very methodical and slow way, which I also appreciate because it's kind of the opposite of my nature. I tend to speak super fast and I'm kind of like all over the place. And do you cultivate that way of speaking, that diction where
I
you
think
yeah, yeah.
that it would be fair to say that whether or not I have deliberately cultivated it, that it is something that that has been cultivated. I you know, I am like I'm a dom, I'm a hypnodom. I hypnotize people.
That's cool.
It's I get very into, so when I speak, it's very easy for me to slip into very kind of like slow, meandering, and rhythmic forms of speech. It's just kind of second nature to me.
So, okay, that's interesting. Now, you are, just to clarify, you are also a professional dominatrix, is that right?
Haven't you read my bio?
Yeah, of course. I want to cover things for people who are listening who might not, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if you like how much research you did for this. Did you scroll down my feed?
I did some scrolling for sure. Yeah, but I like to use this as a platform to kind of just even go over things I think I already am
I'm,
aware of. You know, I like to
I'm,
kind of treat it as if we're meeting for the first time.
I understand. And since we're meeting for the first time, I want to know, like as I often do from people that I'm meeting for the first time, how much have you cyberstalked me prior to our meeting for the first time?
I scrolled down on your Twitter page pretty far, I would say.
How far?
You know, like if the average amount of time I give to the average person who I'm vaguely curious about, I'll maybe scroll down for like 5 seconds, but I would say for you, I scroll down for like 25 seconds probably.
25 seconds.
I mean, I'm very interested in you. Don't take it personally. That's why but the thing is, I have these conversations precisely as a substitute for scrolling. Like having an hour-long or 2-hour-long conversation is a much greater kind of show of interest and investment than any amount of scrolling I could have done.
I understand completely. That's part of the reason I personally started a podcast, is because I was tired of having to do the uncompensated emotional labor of like reading posts, scrolling down the timeline. And I feel that I should have people compensate me for the emotional labor of learning about them. And a podcast is a great way of doing that.
Okay. So yeah, okay. So I was just confirming. So you are a dominatrix by profession. That's right.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. And so you're also, are you also a Christian like Ashley?
What do you mean by Christian like Ashley? That's a very...
Well, I'm just saying that we had a long conversation about Christianity when I talked with Ashley, and I thought that was very fascinating that she's a pretty devout Christian and also a dominatrix. I was just curious because your Twitter, which I paid a lot of attention to, thank you, says that you're, you believe in the Bible, it seems to suggest. And so I was just curious how deep that goes, or if you could describe it.
Well, what is it about my Twitter specifically that led you to believe that I, in your words, believe in the Bible?
Well, it was just an inference from the fact that, your username declares very prominently that anime is in contradiction to the teachings of the Bible. So
that's not, I don't think I said it was in contradictions to the teachings of the Bible.
Is that not the implication? Okay, so then what do you think about anime and the Bible?
My exact words were anime is against the Bible and Marxism-leninism.
Right. So I guess you could interpret that as you love anime and therefore you hate the Bible and Marxism-Leninism.
But that's not the takeaway you got from my page, is it?
No, it's not. The takeaway I got was that you are a Marxist-Leninist and a Bible thumper, and anime, the dangers of anime need to be publicized. That's what I thought. That's the inference I made.
So, and would you say that that's like the type of content you like to engage with typically online?
Well, I would say it's an example of the type of character that I am intrigued by, which is very strange, kind of uncommon associations, especially ideological ones, that, even scrolling through the TL, you don't really get a good sense of what's going on. But with a long conversation, you can maybe understand what the person is really thinking. So yes, that in that sense, that is the type of thing I find quite intriguing. So, I'm just curious if you could, help me understand in your own words a little bit better. How do your views really break down on those fronts?
Absolutely. I definitely do believe that anime is against the Holy Bible and is against the immortal science of Marxism-Leninism. And the reason that I believe that anime and the Holy Bible, or rather that the Holy Bible and Marxism-Leninism are opposed to anime, is because anime, I explained this in my pinned tweet. I don't know if you saw that.
I don't think I did, or I don't recall.
Anime is the propaganda of a reactionary imperialist power. And the Bible, the Holy Bible, it maintains a completely 100% unambiguous position on empires, which is to say that the Bible has never once spoken favorably of empires. You've got the kingdom of heaven, but
Mm-hmm.
every empire is frowned upon.
Okay.
And I would say that Marxism-Leninism frowns upon empires as well. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure. Generally, of course.
No, like Lenin wrote the book Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Joseph Stalin, who synthesized Marxism-Leninism as such, what makes Leninism a qualitative advancement in the science of Marxism is that it is Marxism in the age of imperialism, this, this higher level of capitalism.
Okay. And how does sex work fit into all of that? We had a conversation about that
Well,
last night a little bit.
we didn't finish the anime thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
So
on. I didn't mean to cut you off.
both the Holy Bible and Marxism-Leninism are clearly in agreement here.
Okay.
Do you disagree?
I'm with you. So far. I'm just trying to process your train of thought. We can talk about it after if you want. But carry on.
All right. Okay. So they are clearly in agreement on this particular issue. Anime, when I say it's the propaganda of a reactionary imperialist power, what I mean by that is that Japan, when I say empire, I don't just mean because the formal name of the political entity of Japan is the Empire of Japan. That's not what I mean. I mean that Japan practiced colonialism in the age of colonialism throughout the Pacific Rim, especially. And then as the Industrial Revolution occurred, Japan definitely developed an imperialistic relationship with many of its colonies in the same way that, say, Nazi Germany and Italy did with its, and the UK and the United States did with its. So from, oh, and the Russian Empire, of course, because we're talking prior to the Bolshevik Revolution. And that subsequently, after World War II, World War II, represented this kind of moment where Japan had this decisive military defeat, but as did Nazi Germany, etc. But in Japan, in West Germany, in South Korea, a lot of these cases, in many cases, the ruling class apparatus was effectively the same apparatus that was in power before. Lots of actual Nazis ended up in positions of command in NATO and Western Germany, not to mention, all this stuff with the CIA that's almost secondary to this. The point is that Japan is still imperialist. Japan is imperialist, and it is imperialist under the umbrella of United States imperialism. The anime industry is a part of the ideological state apparatus of the reactionary fascist ruling class of Japan.
Okay.
And these ideas that it is propagating are 100% reactionary and fascist and stand in opposition to the Holy Bible as well as Marxism-Leninism.
Okay, that's interesting. You know what I'm also thinking is, Japan is also like an ethno state, and
Yeah.
I wonder if anime is infecting Westerners with the drive for an ethno state, and that's why on YouTube, so many people in the chat are often talking about white nationalist ethno-states because they watch too much anime, maybe.
Absolutely. I think that there's 100% definitely a causal relationship between consumption of anime and a person becoming reactionary, far right, neo-Nazi, or subscribing to a related system of beliefs.
That's an interesting hypothesis. We could do a proper kind of social science experiment. We could do a survey experiment where half of the people are randomly assigned to watch anime, and then we measure their, predilection for an ethno-state afterwards. That'd be interesting.
I would support this research, and I don't know if you have any contacts in the field of academia, but perhaps
burn.
we could pass along this idea for a research project. It's very topical.
Sick burn.
Everyone wants to research the do research into alt-right type stuff.
Yeah, I could do this. I could do the survey experiment in one day if I wanted to. It's not that hard to do a proper survey experiment. There are a lot of freely available, trivially cheap platforms available to do that kind of proper science experiment. If you're just talking about kind of media exposure treatments, yeah, I could do that. We'll talk about it. Maybe you and I, or my podcast and your podcast, we could co-commission a novel research study. Wow, that would be advancing the game tenfold.
I would be very happy to do this research study with you regarding the topic of. Well, I think I'm not a scientist personally. I strive to practice the immortal science, but I don't know how to practice, like how to formulate like a paper or anything like that. I know there's all sorts of stuff that goes into it. Like you have to have a hypothesis, and it has to be falsifiable, and all this kind of stuff. How would we do this exactly? What would be all the things we would need to put into this?
It's not as hard as people think. I mean, once you know the basic protocols of doing a proper experiment, and then you know how to use the practical platforms, you use, there are a bunch of them out there now. You can use like Amazon Mechanical Turk. You could use Survey Monkey, there's Survey Gizmo. There's a few different ones for like, literally a few bucks. You could, all you need is you need a theory and then a specific hypothesis. Then you need a way to measure that hypothesis in a reliable way. But that would be, in this type of case, it would just be a few survey questions. So basically, you would ask someone some basic kind of demographic questions to, for like control variables if you need that or whatever. There would be one specific kind of measurement variable, which is the key thing, the dependent variable, what you want to measure. So in that case, this would be like, how do you feel about an ethno-state? Something like that. You could do research on, we would go through the previous academic research on like, what is the best way to measure ethno-state, use a survey question from a previous study that's kind of been vetted. But it would be something to the effect of, how much do you agree with the idea of an ethno-state? And all you do, I mean, you can get increasingly sophisticated with it. There are different types of research designs for experiments, but the simplest one, which, is just to fix ideas, it would be something like you randomly assign half of the people to be exposed to, watch 3 minutes of this anime clip, and half of the people,
like, I don't think, because when we're talking about the effects of ideology and like the ideological state apparatus, I don't think that could be measured from an exposure to like a 3-minute anime clip. It's like if someone had the hypothesis that image board memes were spreading far-right ideology, they couldn't then test that hypothesis by just then showing people Pepe memes and saying, all right, are you more fascist now? You'd
Right.
have to do a bit more than that to actually fully assimilate that person into the ideological system of anime.
Yeah, of course, right.
They would
And
have
that's why
they would
science
have
is so hard,
to
right? Because it does,
become
if you really want to get a good test of something complicated like that, yeah, it does get quite challenging. I'm just saying in the simplest case to share with people, you can do this type of experiment quite easy. And I mean, I don't know, you might be not you might be unable to measure the full effect of being immersed in a lifestyle of anime, but you might be able to break it down into uh, its component parts in a way that you can at least test specific aspects of it. And so,
why
yeah,
isn't it measurable to look at like specifically instances of people who are assimilated into anime as an identity and as a subculture? I think that you could have case studies, for
mhm,
instance, and a combination of case studies and broad demographic research.
that's right. You can do that also.
For
Yeah,
instance, you
yeah.
could go to, I think, like the best place you could go to conduct this type of research would be like an anime convention.
Hmm. Or what you do
Compare,
is you find some.
compare,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
com, do a survey of that is representative of the attendees at the anime convention, asking them all how, gauging them enough, asking them enough questions where you can reliably gauge their attitude about ethnostates, not just hey, do you like ethnostates, but like a variety of questions where you can kind of gauge, how like far right, how fascist, how reactionary they lean, and then compare that to the general population.
Yeah, someone in the chat is making a good point that if this gets out, then white nationalists might start recruiting at anime conferences, conventions, or whatever.
White nationalists are already recruiting at anime conventions, and
Do
that's
you
my
think?
point.
Do you
Anime
think like it
conventions
is?
are white nationalist recruitment centers.
Do you think like Richard Spencer spends like half his time at anime conferences?
He
Feel
doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. All they have to, they like literally all they have to do is play anime and have, the body pillows and like the all of it. Like the what are the I don't even know what you call them. I've seen them. They're made of some kind type of synthetic material and it looks like a two-dimensional anime character, often an anime girl, but it's in 3D. It's a structure. It's a sculpture, if you will.
okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I can't say I do.
A synthetic sculpture of an anime girl, often very small.
Okay, sounds cool.
They sell these things, and they don't need Richard Spencer to come there and speak because by selling these things, by having these people there, by playing the shows, they may as well have. They're doing something far more effective than having Richard Spencer come to speak.
Okay. Now, how much do you know about anime? Like, have you watched a lot of it? Have you analyzed it deeply?
Oh no, not at all.
Yeah, I've never watched it. I've never been able to get into it. I mean, I guess that just testifies to my deep anti-racist commitments. But
Exactly. Like I feel like the main reason that I am a principled Marxist-Leninist, as opposed to some kind of like reactionary or even, God forbid, like a Hillary Clinton voter, is that I've never in my life once consumed anime and have completely disciplined my brain
hmm,
to
interesting.
block out anime.
Interesting. I wonder if you could watch anime and like uh identify kind of racist dog whistling.
I'm certain of it. I mean, there's definitely a racist ideology that is, I would say, universal within Japanese culture, and it's not really questioned much because it is it is more of an ethno state. There's not, it is a reactionary ethno state.
Oh,
So there's not much of a movement where people challenge that.
do you want to hear a random story? It's not that random. It's connected slightly, but it's quite a tangent. Can I tell you a story?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to hear a story from you.
I'd like to know your opinion about it. Make a long story. Oh, also, I forgot to ask you. Did you retweet the tweet that I put out right before this?
I believe I did. Yeah.
All right, very good, very good. Yeah, a couple weeks ago, guess who DM'd me?
Who DM'd you?
Richard Spencer's girlfriend.
Really?
Yeah, she's a leftist.
I thought she was more like Dugganist or something.
No, that was his ex-wife.
Oh,
His girlfriend is a leftist, and she reached out to me because she knows that I'm interested in like weird ideological combinations, basically, and that I'm like open-minded. And yeah, so we were like, she was basically like telling me how all of 4chan hates her, and the internet is like turning against her, basically.
what's her name?
Um, I think Megan.
Megan what?
Um, her last name is Bobanik.
Megan Bobinek?
I think her
Does
first name is Megan.
what's her Twitter?
If you Google that, you should find it. I don't remember what her specific username is, but yeah, it's something like that. And yeah, I mean, I looked at like I was very intrigued when she started telling me this, and I looked into it, and it all checks out. She's a PhD student, and she's like she seems like very genuinely, she's like a mild mannered leftist woman, and yeah, and there are like pictures of them together. And she wrote like an essay about kind of like her experience and how she sees it. And yeah, it was very interesting. And we kind of I guess she was kind of raising the possibility of like maybe that she and I could talk like on the internet in this type of situation. And I don't really know how I feel about it because I don't think she's a bad person. But it is, I'm not a fan of white nationalism at all, and I'm not especially keen to uh, get too connected to it. Like, it's not a fear of, whatever, like people talking shit about me, or like I'm not worried about people's like stupid paranoias or whatever. But
You're not worried about being canceled. You just genuinely don't want to be associated with it.
Yeah, I just don't want to go too deep in that direction, and then like everyone who watches my shit is like a white nationalist, and I just those aren't the themes I'm interested in, and I just don't want to go that far out that way because I'm just not into it. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's practical. I don't think it's attractive or ethically defensible. But she is a leftist, and that's what's interesting, and I am kind of all about like interesting, weird, fringe ideological combinations. So she definitely qualifies for that, but I feel a little skittish about talking with Richard Spencer's girlfriend. What do you think about that?
Oh, you say that she's a leftist, which is like one of the most meaningless words in the English language. What does that mean?
Meaning like she supports like she's like an anti-racist and supports like queer culture and is pro-homosexual, and she seems to have all of the kind of standard litany of socially progressive viewpoints, basically.
That sounds more like, I mean, a person can have those viewpoints and be like liberal or even like libertarian, and even like, I think that certain segments of not so much the alt-right, but like maybe like the alt-light, and like European far-right movements, they tend to really kind of embrace the idea of like progressive liberal values as like one of the the markers of like Western cultural superiority. And I think that, so what you're telling me isn't selling me on the idea that she's a leftist.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, what do I know? I don't know her that well, so I can hardly say very much. And you could be right, but I mean, I guess on some level, if you're willing to date Richard Spencer, like,
Yeah.
there's something like not super strong about your like left wing commitments. But I mean, I don't know. Who knows? I don't know.
I mean, I think it would be interesting to find out more.
Yeah, exactly.
And I understand that impulse to like want to find out more. Um, at the same time, I think that they're, they know that people are going to want to find out more. That's probably why she's reaching out to you. And if she's reaching out to you, there's probably like a little bit of a intention to engineer spectacle.
Right. Maybe. To be fair, I don't think she wasn't, exactly like insinuating herself into anything. She wasn't, she was like quite reasonable and just messaging me some. She just thought that I would be interested in her case, and for not a bad reason, that I am kind of generally interested in weird ideological combinations. But I think you're right that you sometimes things might just like create more of a spectacle than is worthwhile or something. Like I'm not
Yeah.
afraid, but yeah.
Anytime I message anyone involved in any type of media and I say, you might be interested in this, it's because I'm trying to create some kind of spectacle.
True. I guess in some sense, yeah, that is what people do. Perhaps myself included, I guess. Anyway, that was just a random story. We don't need to get bogged down. I was just curious if you had any input. I mean, let me ask you this: what is the politics of Girls Chat, your podcast with Ashley? Like in the sense of how do you two think about, and what is your stance on kind of boundaries regarding controversial characters?
Girls Chat, I think, is something that is absolutely abject and horrible.
Wow.
I think that to go on Girls Chat means to confront the absolute loss of your existence as you know it.
Wow. Okay.
To go on Girls Chat is to rend yourself apart. And so I think that we, in terms of the politics of Girls Chat, we don't really editorialize on the podcast that much. We sometimes get into some theory conversations, but we don't really editorialize about politics. But in terms of like who we're willing to curate, I think that our having someone on certainly isn't an endorsement of them.
Right.
And in some cases, it can be interpreted as the opposite, or at least something more ambivalent than that. I think there's always ambivalence with like. I think going on to Girls Chat is an intrinsically ambivalent thing. We wouldn't have, and I think it's unlikely that we would have an avowed Nazi or anything like that on. I don't think that there would be much point in doing that. But
Would you dom a Nazi professionally?
and that's the thing. Because Girls Chat does have BDSM themes, and that's why it's so abject. that having people on can actually be very humiliating for them. It can be it can be something that doesn't actually platform them in a way that they would necessarily want to be platformed. So I think that while we want to have controversial people on, we want to have canceled people on. I feel like Nazis not so much. As far as in my professional life, I've definitely, had clients who have, so sometimes you don't know everything about them when you meet them, and then you discover in the course of a session that they have like some neo-Nazi tattoos or something. Like that's I shouldn't say this actually. I was about to dox someone live on air. But I think that there's definitely been instances in which I have had people with like either like U.S. government or right-wing political connections as clients.
Right. Well, it's kind of impossible to know until, it's impossible to know, right? Like, it would be ridiculous to vet clients for their politics in advance.
Well, and I mean, in some cases, you do know if they like are kind of like a professionally political kind of person. If they're like involved in the government, it's possible to find out through screening before you meet them. But I don't think that I have like an ethical obligation to turn down money from someone who's morally reprehensible. I mean, I think they're all morally reprehensible for being my client anyway.
Yeah. Also, I mean, you can make the argument that you're ethically obligated to dom Nazis, especially, right? I mean, someone could make a business that's specifically targeting Nazi beta bros.
Well, I think that like
as a social justice project.
I think that like what you fail to realize though is that just being a professional dominatrix in and of itself already is that. Like, there definitely are liberal betas and like that kind of thing who seek out dominatrixes, but on average, they have less money. So really, you're dealing with. I mean, fascists with castration anxiety are a dominatrix bread and butter.
So do you think that white nationalists today in the West, do they have castration anxiety? Is there something like that going on?
Do I think that there's like a link between fascism and castration anxiety? Yes, but I wouldn't put it as like simply as like fascism is caused by castration anxiety. That's kind of that would be like way overly reductive. I think there's a lot of complicated social forces which produce the phenomenon of reactionary ideologies, and those same social forces can be experienced as emasculating to the male subject, and that is something that is very much part of the ideological and cultural content of fascism and far right ideology and media.
Word. Last night when we talked, you were saying that there were parts where you were basically kind of psychoanalyzing me, and there were parts where you sensed some castration anxiety in my life or my perspective, and I was just thinking about it after that, like last night or this morning. I was thinking about it, and like castration anxiety it's very reasonable because like for men, like their balls are like so vulnerable, it's ridiculous. They're like in this like soft, super soft like sack that could just like easily be chopped off if there was ever any kind of like accident or something, if it was exposed. So yeah, I feel like a little bit of like baseline castration anxiety is probably like a good operating philosophy in
Well,
life.
I think it's universal to have some degree of castration anxiety, because that, what you're describing is like this appendage that's soft, that is considered as like definitive of you as a man, that can be easily severed. That is just one instance of how your concept of what you are and who you are can be disrupted by many, many, many forces.
Right, right. Now, last night you were kind of telling me some advice about, well, I think if I recall, your judgment last night was that I am, I mean, I don't want to brag here or anything, but you said, I think that I'm an alpha male. Is that right?
Um, I don't really remember exact. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice.
Okay.
May need to get a glass of water. I don't really remember exactly what was said, and moreover, I don't want to spoil the episode.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to spoil.
You know,
Okay,
it's
we'll
gonna
scratch
come
that.
out, and like not at the end of this week, but at the end of next week. And I don't want there to be any spoilers.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. Because on these podcasts, when I have a guest on, I want to be really welcoming. I want to be nice. I try to go pretty far out of my way to be, not prostrating, but I like to, go out of my way to make people feel welcome and disarmed. So that often means that I engage in various types of verbal and body language related kind of somewhat, you could argue, somewhat beta gestures to make people welcome. Do you think that that's a bad strategy or a good strategy? Like, should I be more dominant on this podcast, do you think?
Can you show me one of these beta gestures?
Oh, well, I think I've been doing them, throughout this talk. I do them throughout all my talks. It's just, I defer to the other person. I kind of let them set the tone. I try to always find the positive kind of constructive response to things instead of being assertive and taking people down a notch and I try not to grandstand, these sorts of things, which I could very well do. And I sometimes have a knack for if I want to. But I very much kind of suppress that more assertive, forceful side of myself. Just curious from the perspective of a dominatrix, if you think this is good style for my podcast or bad style.
You still didn't. You mentioned that there were some visual or like physical elements to your beta behavior.
Yeah, I mean,
Can I get like a visual demonstration of this?
sure, I've been doing them throughout. I mean, even just basic things about how. Okay, the best way to give you an example would be to do the opposite. Then I'll give you examples of me being alpha male. That way, you can see how everything I've been doing up until now has been kind of trying to be beta. So, for instance, if you say something and I want to kind of assert myself over it, I might change my body language like this. I might sit up. I might pull this close to me. I might say, "Yeah, but you know what? Here's what I think. All right." Like I never make that kind of gesture.
No.
You know what I mean?
That is not alpha. That's just like a really bad audio engineering practice.
Oh, okay.
Like you shouldn't be like handling your microphone like that while you're recording. especially not like a condenser microphone like that. You don't want to be, because I got all these sorts of horrible sounds. Then I could barely hear you. That
Ooh.
wasn't alpha, man. That was just, it made you look foolish.
Oh, okay. So maybe I'm just naturally being alpha in my relaxed state then. What can I say?
I think that there's something to that. To be alpha is not to be, do you know, I'm a dominatrix. Do I come across to you as aggressive, combative,
No, you're very gentle and slow and precise.
serene even?
Serene even. Sure.
And those, to be calculating and contemplative and serene, these are dominant qualities as well.
That's true. Okay. Well, that's good then. I think that's positive feedback. What about how do you relate to your audience as a podcaster? Do you treat them as betas and you kind of talk to them in a way that's dominant and refer to them in a way that's dominant?
We don't really talk about or to the audience that much. I mean, there's been a couple jokes that we've made about, well, on our Patreon, we have like a $100 level tier, which is the penitent males tier. So there's clearly an element of femdom, like people of their own volition say things like, if you go to and we retweet what people say of their own volition, that like we don't need to say you're a bunch of pathetic faggots, and because people say it themselves, and all we have to do is provide a platform for that.
Okay. Now, all right. Well, if you were on YouTube, one of the things you'd have to deal with is the live chat. So when I do these live streams, there are always people typing in as I'm doing them, and I've reflected a lot on how I should treat these people because it's quite a mix. Sometimes it's very thoughtful, constructive input. Sometimes it's people just negging me really aggressively, which I can handle.
They troll you.
What's that?
They troll you.
Sometimes a little bit, for sure. It's
And
not that.
where do they access this live chat, by the way?
Oh yeah, you could if you wanted to. I don't recommend it to people because it's like you never know what you're going to get, and it can be
my group DMs.
It can be very distracting. What's that?
I want to send the link to my group DMs.
You want me to give you the link?
Yeah, so I can send it to group DMs that I'm in.
Oh, okay. This is interesting. All right. So people in the chat, you might get an influx of new people coming from Ashley's channels. Let's. Oh, I'm sorry, not Ashley. MK. Sorry. You guys sound so similar.
You can say job haver.
It's hard to keep track. Okay. Hang on. So okay, I'll which Twitter do you want me to give it to?
Send it to the job haver Twitter account.
Well, it's just it's beneath the video watch page. It's on the video watch page. So you should already have it, but I can give it to you again if you want.
All right. Well, how do they access the actual?
All you have to do is go to the video watch page and scroll down, and there's a public chat.
So the same like the Hangouts link?
No, the Hangouts link is only for you that I gave you. I'll just give you it. I'll give you another link. What account do you want me to DM?
Job haver.
Okay, we'll do it right now. Job haver, where are you at? Here we go. Here's the watch page. Here's the watch page with public chat.
So you're sending me, where is this? Okay, watch page.
So I just sent you the the public YouTube live stream that people are
Okay.
watching right now. And anyone who goes to that page, you just scroll down and there's a public text chat that people have been talking in for the whole time.
Where I'm gonna click on it right now. I'm gonna try to find the text chat. And then if we do get people from who are, my friends,
That'd be fun.
from the group DMs, I would appreciate it if you would actually engage with them. That would be nice.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. That'd be fun.
So I'm opening up the YouTube page right now.
So while you're doing that, actually, someone in the chat is asking me to finish my thought about the chat. So I'll just do that and you do your thing. Yeah, no, my chat that's associated, that the people that come to my live streams and videos and participate in the chat, it's a very mixed bag. Sometimes it's very thoughtful, sometimes it's very positive and constructive. There's I think relatively a small percentage of trolls or people who like try to neg me pretty hard. It happens every now and then, but I can handle it. It's not that bad. And then there's like a small number of, I think, like, what's that?
I see the chat.
You found it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's hard to follow the chat and talk, but you're welcome to do as you please. So just to finish my thought, yeah, no, then there's also like a small number of people who watch my stuff who I'm pretty sure are like white nationalists, basically. I think they're like a small percentage of the people who watch my videos, but YouTube does just have like all the small number of white nationalists that exist in the US. They are disproportionately on YouTube, presumably because there's not a lot of content for them in like mainstream media. And some portion of the white nationalists who watch YouTube are, if there's any type of like leftist like myself who doesn't like completely shit on everyone outside the boundaries of like politically correct discourse, then such a person is bound to get some fraction of white nationalists who are, interested in different types of things. And so, yeah, a common thing in my chat is like people try to make me more white nationalist.
So they're basically they're seeing you as a kind of like proto-fascist or crypto-fascist, and they're trying to get you to go full fash.
Yeah, or they think that I'm like kind of like red-pilled, but I'm not quite as red-pilled as I could and should be, and they're gonna try to make me even more red-pilled, that kind of thing. But I should also say real quick that I'm like I actually appreciate all the diversity of my chat. Like I'm not disrespecting the chat as a whole. I actually think that my chat is relatively a good one. It's fascinating. It's very diverse. Like there's some amount of trolls who kind of give me shit, but that's just part of the game. And even though I don't agree with white nationalism, I'm not like horrified that in a wide open public space there might be some in the chat. So it's on the whole an interesting place, and I appreciate my diverse chat community for all its virtues and faults, I think.
So you appreciate the Nazis in your chat?
Well, it's hard to find the right language for it, but I appreciate that YouTube is it is a relatively open place, and it's wild, and I appreciate the wild,
So you appreciate the Nazis in your chat.
I don't
because you appreciate the wild.
Well, I'm choosing my words very carefully because I want to be careful about this. I do not appreciate white nationalism. I don't think it's good. I really don't think it's good in any way. I don't agree with it. And however, I appreciate that there are many people in the world and there's a wide diversity of viewpoints. And I genuinely also think that villainizing viewpoints, which some people have, and treating them as if they're absolute evil and criminal and they deserve absolutely no right to talk amongst themselves, I think that posture is much more harmful for everyone involved. And so, yeah, I do not take that posture is basically all I'm really saying.
So whose speech do you believe should be suppressed and by the state, and whose do you think should be allowed to propagate?
I would say, I guess I'm a free speech absolutist in that
Really?
regard. I think the state probably should not be involved in making any determinations about any speech.
So let's say you call yourself a what's the secular Catholic libertarian communist, correct?
I think I've dropped the secular part.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I haven't yet. I forgot to. I'm still on the fence about that. But no, I generally drop the secular when people ask me now.
So you're a Catholic libertarian communist. If you were in a society wherein capital and the state had been eliminated and people were trying to figure out, all the basic, how society is going to function, they're creating new institutions in order to figure that out. And then you have a group of people, they have a lot of guns. They are a Nazi party. They have a militia. And they also publish newspapers promoting their viewpoint and encouraging people to join the militia that is designed to suppress this burgeoning Catholic libertarian communist community. Would you say, excuse me, would you say that their propaganda, they're disseminating their text, isn't just as much as connected to their military bid for power as the other forms, the other aspects of their organization?
Yeah, sure. Text and speech can be a part of aggressive bids for power. Sure.
And so in those cases, would you say that society should allow for a group of individuals who have a Nazi ideology, who are seeking to overthrow Justin Murphy's ideal Catholic libertarian communist utopia? They should be allowed, even, I assume that you wouldn't allow them to carry out violent insurrections, that you'd suppress that violently, correct?
Sure, that's right.
But their propaganda activities that support their violent insurrection, you'd allow it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I think that's because the great wager here is that so long as all speech is radically free and not suppressed, then stupid ideas, bad ideas won't really be able to win in the long run. And I guess I do believe that.
Do you think that an organization, an institution that has a military, like a paramilitary institution, a paramilitary organization with a political wing, is the same as just someone with a stupid idea? Like, I feel like that's a different case.
I see your point for sure. And I think you're right. But if there's a kind of paramilitary project, then surely you'll be able to suppress on the grounds of the illegal challenges to sovereignty. So do you see what I'm saying? So like, you're right that if you're trying to kind of overthrow the government or something like that, or hurt a bunch of people, and text propaganda or speech propaganda is a part of that, then, surely precisely what makes that dangerous is that something somewhere along that chain of events, there will be more properly substantively illegal behavior. So that would be the point of suppression, I think.
It's not even that. What I'm talking about is not someday down the line. I'm talking about an actual reactionary paramilitary organization that just has a propaganda wing that they use to support their military campaigns.
So you're talking about like a militia or something like that?
Yeah.
So like imagine like, somewhere in the country.
Or not necessarily a militia, but something, there's many organizations involved in conflicts all over the world that are both, it's like a political party with a militia and a media wing. Like examples of that exist in like Ukraine and Syria and Lebanon.
Yeah, I just don't think you can suppress for the speech part.
So you would just take away their guns.
If they're breaking the laws with the guns.
Exactly. If they are organizing to gain power, you take away their guns.
If they're illegal, sure, yeah.
And then you'd allow their political organization that acquired the guns and began to use them against people to continue to operate and propagate itself.
I would doubt that. I would doubt their ability to propagate themselves. Like, look, there's an important background fact here for me, which is that I think that human agency is being foreclosed rapidly. I just don't think that many groups at all, whether they're good or bad, have much power left today to force any type of creative social change. Mostly everything is determined now by capitalist dynamics, really. The market has never been more efficient and more kind of all encompassing. It's never been such a fully forceful and, all integrating planetary force, right? And so I just don't see any groups, whether they be good ones that I admire or atrocious ones that I find unconscionable. I don't really see any of them having much effect with any kind of systematically organized speech activity. So that's an important background for why I think a lot of these efforts to try to kind of identify bad speech and suppress it, it's impossible, and the gains are negligible, and the costs, I think, are tremendous.
Here's what I think. I think that anime is the ideological wing of organized fascism, and that anyone disseminating anime, whether it be importing it into the United States, creating fan subs, administering web forums related to anime, posting GIFs from anime, etc., having anime avatars. All of these people are providing material support to fascism and
So
belong in prison.
do you think anime should be banned?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's a powerful statement. What about VR porn?
It should also be illegal.
But do you think that sex work, such as dominatrix work, should be illegal?
Yes, I do.
Interesting. So you would prefer if your job was made illegal and no one was able to do what you currently do? You'd prefer that?
That is correct. Yeah.
Are there many sex workers who have that position, or is that a very rare position?
I wouldn't say it's extremely rare, because I mean, it's rare in as much as like Most sex workers don't want to be sex workers. In the United States, the number is 80% don't want to be. In Australia, where it's decriminalized, that number is a little bit lower at 70%. So most sex workers don't want to be sex workers. I think that most don't have the political consciousness to say that means we need a society that doesn't force people to do this, and that we need to suppress this thing after we reach that point.
Okay. Interesting. That's an interesting perspective. I, for one, have no controversial opinions about sex work because although I arguably tried it once, I don't consider myself to have skin in the game, as it were. So I try not to make judgments about things that I don't understand very well. But I tend to agree. I tend to agree with you. My intuitions are with you that we would have it would be a better society in which this type of work did not occur.
Don't say your intuitions. That's so unfeeling. Say your heart. Say my heart is with you.
My heart. Well, it's a little bit more intellectualized than the heart, though. It's somewhere halfway between. Intuitions are halfway between the heart and brain.
Just say it for me. It'll make me happy.
You want me to say it's from the heart?
Yes.
I could just give you other things from the heart.
All right, let's hear them.
I feel from the bottom of my heart that what do I feel from the bottom of my heart? Sorry, my artificial intelligence algorithm is breaking for a second. Let me reboot it. Oh, that's right. Calling what I feel from the heart. I feel from the heart that you and I will become friends, MK.
And do you also feel like, from the heart, my opinions about banning sex work and anime, also the furry fandom, Rick and Morty, Steven Universe, Doctor Who, and webcomics?
You want to ban all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you feel about that from the heart?
My heart says, my heart would not be sad if any of those things were banned. I don't watch any of those things. I don't understand the appeal of Rick and Morty. People have told me that this is a good show. I've looked at it once. I only needed to look at it for 2 seconds to realize this is a child's material for overgrown adolescents. And I do think that there is a rot deep in the heart of our culture in which adult people are doing extraordinary damage to themselves by the culture that they consume.
They're not adulting.
They're not adulting. I think the real enemy here, though, is Netflix. I kind of think Netflix should be banned as a whole.
100% agree, yeah.
Someone in the chat says that they learned white nationalism from Rick and Morty. So I believe that.
I believe that, yeah.
I watched a movie last night on Netflix called Cam. Have you heard of it?
I have not heard of most movies, and I have definitely not heard of most movies that are like on Netflix because I have respect for myself.
Yeah, well, I thought of you guys when I watched it because it's about cam girls. It's like a ridiculous Netflix movie. My wife and I watched it just kind of out of like very curious. Like when you can tell something's going to be so dumb, but you just kind of you want to see it. You want to see it play out. You want to watch it happen. It was kind of one of those, and man, was it dumb. But Yeah, it's definitely like you're definitely going to see, I think, more. You're going to see sex work become more and more normalized. Do you agree? I feel like I'm seeing that very clearly.
It's more than just normalized. It's becoming universalized. I think that like 50 years ago, sex work was either okay, you were someone who is a prostitute or a stripper, or you were a prostitute or a stripper who got recruited into pornography. There was none of, it's the sex industry is objectively bigger than ever, and it's distributed further than ever. I think that most women, maybe not most, but like a large percentage of women on social media, even who aren't like sex workers, have at some point in time like made money off of like a guy DM sliding them. Um, and it's just as that technology continues to mediate sex work, and distribute those sexual relationships further and further across these networks, and those networks become more intricate, I think more and more people, more and more women especially, will be sex workers.
Right. Yeah. Maybe even in increasingly subtle ways that hardly even are seen as sex work. I mean, maybe who knows? Like maybe these live streams that I do, maybe I'm actually doing sex work without even knowing it. Like maybe people are
Yeah,
jerking off to me.
you're definitely doing sex work right now.
You think people are jerking off to me sometimes?
Oh, of course.
Dude, that's
Especially the people, especially in the chat, who are like, trolling you and like calling you mean names and stuff. Those are DOMs.
wait, those are DOMs? Or
Yeah,
they're
those
being
are
DOM?
DOMs. They are DOMs, and they are attempting to dominate you. They
Oh.
are they're humiliating you verbally, and they're at home jerking off to that.
Oh, even though I'm not really like allowing them to dom me, is that still gonna work for them?
It doesn't matter, yeah.
Okay. Because I like to think I'm the dom of my community. But would you agree with that probably or no?
You can't control how other people relate to you.
Okay.
You're like they when they sign on to YouTube to look at your live stream, they're coming in with their own baggage, their own, the when they look at Justin Murphy, they're not going to necessarily see the same Justin Murphy that I see.
Wow.
They might see, a pathetic little bitch boy who needs to be owned.
Wow. You're right, maybe. And maybe some of them though see me as the dominant alpha and they come in to the chat and they watch my videos to be dominated by me.
Exactly. And all of those viewers, all of those subscribers, everyone who participates in your chats who is doing that, is exploiting your sexual labor.
Wow. So I really am doing sex work.
You really are.
Wow. Yeah. And this will probably become, well, I mean, you do kind of see this actually a little bit more clearly with, I feel like with some of the more like female podcasters and live streamers out there, it's quite obvious in those cases, right? That there's a sexual element often. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess probably all of this stuff does exist on a kind of continuum, a kind of sexual continuum.
Maybe you should take off that cable knit sweater.
Whoa. This is getting spicy.
Maybe you should start showing a little bit more skin.
Do you think? The reason I always have a sweater on is just because it's cold in this room that I do this in.
Set up a space heater. I mean, that's what cam girls do. And
Wow. I
do you
wonder.
review?
Well, the only thing I'm thinking is if I were to do that sort of thing, I would need to set up the experimental measurement conditions a little bit more with greater sophistication because I would really be interested in deducing whether or not it has a real causal effect on my, viewer counts, my patronage. I would need to set it up proper so that I could measure reliably if this sort of tweak produces desirable results. And then I would have to reflect on the ethical implications of those desired results, because I am engaged in a very particular kind of project related to building a kind of long-term intellectual truth-seeking apparatus. And I think that if you are trying to optimize for your lifelong truth output, you do have to be careful about the other types of sub goals that you might be trying to achieve. And there's always this risk that sub goals such as money or watch counts or whatever, that you can get distracted by those things, and before you know it, you're just trying to optimize money, you're just trying to get people to pay attention to you, and you've sacrificed your real long-term commitment to the truth. So I mean, I have a very open mind towards all these things. Obviously, if you want to build a successful productive apparatus of any kind, you need financial sustainability. So I'm not I have a very open mind about how to do that most effectively, and I will think about your suggestion, but I need to be careful and not just do things because I think it might bring in more money or bring in more watchers.
Do you work out?
What's that?
Do you work out? Do you have a nice body?
I do work out a lot. I would not, describe myself in such a self-flattering way. That's for other people to decide, perhaps, or it's primarily for my wife to decide. But what's that?
It's for your viewers to decide.
That's right. They can decide. But I do work out a lot. Yeah, definitely.
I think that like if you're gonna like rebrand as like a more kind of like thirst trap, Justin Murphy thirst trap, I think that's like probably the way to go. A good idea might be to lose the beard.
Really?
Yeah.
To be more like a twink, are you saying?
Yeah, I think that you have kind of a twink look already, and you need to embrace it. And that just show some skin. You have a nice body. You just have to show some skin.
Don't flatter me. I will. It'll go to my head, and it's best we not do that. So I'll think about it, though. Yeah, I'd have to think. That would be quite a rebrand for me. So if I were to ever think about doing that sort of thing, that would be quite a change. I don't know. The thing is, I think that makes sense if you're an attractive woman in today's world, but even if you're like a fairly, fit man such as myself, and I'm not, how should I put this? Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Even if you're a relatively fit man such as myself, I think the gains that I would make in terms of like, viewer counts and income from thirst trapping would be so small for me. Like, I don't think there's much of a market for people who would like come to read my stuff and watch my stuff for that purpose. That
like you're completely wrong.
Really?
Absolutely wrong. Yeah.
Well, maybe there's a way that I can experiment with this sort of thing and test the effects. Like I can set up some web experiments where I can basically calculate like what is the expected increase in my my e-celeb and my income streams from like taking my shirt off or something like that. I'd have to set it up so I can measure that. That would be interesting to learn, and then I could evaluate.
Like post like a selfie that's like a little sultry, and see how it does on the TL.
I will think about this. I appreciate your encouragement. I appreciate your kind words, and I appreciate your encouragement. And I will think about this aspect of the e-celeb game. I think for me currently, it's not my style, but it's an interesting idea, and I'll think about that. I realize we've been talking for some time. Are you tired? How are you feeling? Did you invite people to the chat?
I tried to get people to join in the chat. I don't know if they did.
The chat today, in our talk tonight, the chat has been something else. It's been quite rambunctious, I would say.
Why do you say that?
Well, I don't know, just interesting. I think a few of your people did come in at one point or another. And
What are they saying?
well, one person is saying not everything is statistics, Justin. You have 36 viewers right now. Just ask them. Okay, I'm asking you all, folks. Vote yes or no to the thirst trapping Justin proposal. I'm not promising anything, but I will consider inputs. And also in the earlier parts of the chat, yeah, I don't know, it just seemed very rambunctious. Oh, well, one thing that people keep asking about, are you watching it now?
Am I watching the chat?
Yeah or no?
No.
One thing a lot of people have been asking about, I don't really care personally, so I haven't really thought to ask it. But just like when Ashley was on here, a popular question that has occurred is whether or not you're a trans person. I personally really don't care, so you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But that is something people were curious about. Is that a public fact for you or no?
That's a popular question. I think people kind of project a trans idea onto girls chat in general because we kind of deliberately play with that concept a lot.
Right. So do you not say your status on that front?
I don't personally like identify with it's a complicated thing in terms of like gender theory and all that stuff. I don't identify with like transgender on an ideological level, no.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, when I had my conversation with Ashley a couple weeks ago, some people on the internet got really mad at me, like I was being rude about trans issues. I don't think I was really, but
I think that I actually might have seen some of that.
oh, okay. What's your take?
Did I think you were being rude?
Yeah, or any comment on that, whatever, if you have any.
I have no comment on any of it.
Did you listen to my talk with Ashley?
Yeah, I listened to parts of it. I didn't listen to the whole thing.
Did you think I was in any way rude to trans issues, or you can tell me honestly? I'm open.
I again like I don't have any particular comment on it, and have kind of gender theory views that are, I think, a bit different than the kind of underlying assumptions of a lot of people who would be calling you transphobic. But I'm just gonna go ahead and say, yeah.
Yeah, what?
That you're transphobic and that you should lean in.
Lean into transphobia.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an interesting bit of advice. Well, for what it's worth, I reflected on it a little bit, and I actually did make a separate video a week or so after where I gave some thoughtful attention to reflecting on my attitudes and behaviors on that front. And yeah, I won't recapitulate it, but I gave a little bit of ground to the critiques that were made of me, and so yeah, that's fine. But now I have some new ideas to deal with because you're telling me I should amp up the transphobia.
Especially once you start thirst trapping. Like when you start presenting yourself as like as a male sex object that will inherently feminize you in the eyes of your viewers. And I think that one way to kind of counterbalance that is with transphobia.
Wow.
So
Okay.
you should show some skin shave the beard, and get really transphobic.
I think that actually you're probably right that that would be a winning combination for a lot of people. That's like Bronze Age pervert, basically, kind of. I don't know if you know
Is he,
who that
I
is.
do know who that is, yeah. Is he transphobic? I don't even
I don't
know.
know. I don't think so exactly, but I suspect he's a kind of complicated image, I think, and I suspect he would be an umbrella under which some of the people you just described would probably identify themselves. So I think you're right that that would probably be like a profitable niche. What would actually be sweet, what I want to do ideally is I want to get good enough with machine learning algorithms and basically AI techniques, and I would like to generate
Automate
like
transphobia.
I'd like to generate like 10 different versions of myself. So for instance, like I could make a bunch of videos of me like with my shirt off and saying transphobic things, just generate that through the computer and have a bunch of profiles for that version of me. And then do, like a beta sweet boy, like feminist SJW man, Justin, and generate all of that programmatically. That would
You
be
don't
like the
actually,
real ticket to like a mega e-celeb empire.
you don't actually have to involve, and I think that this is, people overcomplicate things.
Okay.
They look for a problem with a tech fix
Hmm.
when that's not that you don't need a AI or holograms or anything like that to do what you're talking about.
Hmm.
All you have to do is develop separate characters for yourself, which you've already begun to do.
Hmm. Interesting.
You, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but on Girls Chat, your appearance, you appeared as two different characters.
You're talking about my buddy Lil JB.
So I mean, and I think that there's no reason that these characters can't multiply. There's no reason even a little JB couldn't start taking his shirt off and being transphobic. That's very in character
Oh shit, you're
for
right.
a rapper.
Maybe Lil JB is the thirst trapping, Xanax loaded transgender SoundCloud rapper of the century.
Transphobic SoundCloud rapper of the century.
Oh, what did I say? I thought I said that.
He said transgender.
Oh no, yeah, it wouldn't be transgender, transphobic. It's interesting, interesting possibility. You're definitely generating some intriguing food bits of food for thought. Well, one of the problems, yeah, you're right. Yeah, different characters. I'll think about that. I feel like I'm keeping you too long. Are you
Yeah, I think
tired?
I'm gonna dip out.
Yeah, this has been a
Not know.
long and fun. So thank you for all of your time.
You are very welcome.
Could you give me just real quick, like, what do you feel from the bottom of your heart about this conversation?
From the bottom of my heart, I feel like all of the people watching this are pathetic worms. Their dicks are under 3 inches. They should never be allowed to touch them unless they donate and subscribe to Chat for Girls.
All right, powerful statement. That is on brand for you. So, real quick, I'm going to plug your stuff for you. Your Twitter, I think, is Chat for Girls, right? That's the one for the podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, it's at Chat for Girls.
Right.
It's not the number four, it's the word for FOR.
Right. At Chat for Girls. And your username on Twitter is Job Haver.
Correct.
That's right. And yeah, any beta bros out there, or any of you real tough guys in the chat who might, have a secret predilection but for, being domed by very powerful, slow, careful speaking women such as MK. I can think of no better place to send you than Girls Chat. MK, we'll stay in touch, shall we?
Let's.
I hope you have found this edifying and worthwhile.
It was a pleasure.
Ooh, you're throwing some shade on your way out.
No, not at all. I just was being careful with my words.
Well, that's fine. That's fair enough. I've enjoyed it for one, and I have found it edifying. So thanks again. I appreciate you joining me, for real.
It was a pleasure.
Great, MK. Take it easy. Thanks again. I'll let you go. All right. Well, that was interesting as always. It's what, 10:53 now, and so that was about 2 hours. Just another wild romp through the interesting thoughts of a unique and fascinating person. I'll have to digest that one for a little while, but I enjoyed it. I know a lot of you like anime, and so this might have been very controversial for some of you. I hope you weren't triggered too hard by the anti-anime sentiment. I tried looking into it after a couple weeks ago when anime came up on the chat. I tried looking into it, like people made some suggestions, and I just don't get it personally. I couldn't get into it, but hey, people will do what they'll do. I hope you found that interesting. I hope if there are a few people here from the Girls Chat podcast, welcome. Thank you for hanging out on my channel. I do these live streams regularly. So if you haven't already, all of you out there, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You know the drill. You know what they say. Like it, reply, all that bullshit. Go for it. That's cool. I have a Discord server that is active right now. So it's basically just for all the people who kind of get in touch with me about, having interest in the themes that I'm interested in. Yeah, if you like my kind of particular, I guess, brand of interests and the themes that I always find myself talking about, if you're interested in that, all you have to do is shoot me a DM on Twitter. Tell me you want to get in the Discord server, and I'll give you directions from there. It's a very arcane, very special process to get into the Discord server. It's an initiation process. I'm mostly kidding. It's not very much at all. But yeah, just DM me on Twitter, and I'll hook it up. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Thank you for the interesting inputs this evening. The chat had a somewhat interesting vibe tonight. It was, for some reason, it felt a little bit different than usual. I think you all were quite antsy. Not necessarily a bad thing. You can be how you want to be. I don't really care. But some of you, yeah, seemed like there were some interesting comments in the thread, which I did see, even if I didn't have the time to get to them or to respond to them. But yeah, one thing I'll say is that I think some of you were kind of a little bit, you didn't understand why I'm interested in some of the people I'm interested in. And I think if you really look at all of the guests that I always have and the types of people that I want to talk with, I think if you really look at it and take a step back, you will understand, there is a larger logic to all the people I talk with. Some of it is more serious, some of it is more lighthearted, but part of one of the things that I'm trying to do with all of my internet activity is, well, first of all, there is, I think, value in diversity, but real diversity. I don't mean like diversity for, maintaining like an image of equality that looks like a, university marketing brochure or something like that. But I mean radical diversity in the sense of being purposefully and kind of actively random a little bit. I think it's good to kind of I'm attracted to what's a little weird. What I'm attracted to what I don't really understand. I like encountering people on the internet who have projects and they're doing something, and I don't really get it. I don't, so like if you look at MK's Twitter, for instance, like her username is anime is against the Bible and Marxist-Leninism. I find I see that sort of thing and I'm just like, I want to know what's under the hood. I want to know what's there, and you never know what you're going to find. But that's the kind of underlying logic of all of the different guests that I have. And yeah, they're going to be like very different. And I don't want to get pigeonholed into a particular type of guest, sometimes I'll talk with, more highbrow, somewhat academic, high theory types of people. Sometimes I just want to talk with people I'm curious about. And also, like, I like just having fun. Like, I like talks that are a little bit more jokey and it might be fun for you. I might not be fun. Maybe it's not funny to you. I don't know. That's not really my top priority. I want to record things that other people find valuable in some way, for sure. But I think my top priority, honestly, is being authentic to my own, using kind of my own sensibility as my main North Star, because if I were to get too worried about what you all think or too worried about the feedback in the chat, then I would just become, a kind of flimsy, weak-willed mirror of the herd, right? And that would not be in the long run very interesting or attractive to any of you, I don't think. So yeah, I just go with what I'm intrigued by. I go with what I'm curious about, and that's going to be a high variance project. So yeah, in the future, maybe keep an open mind. You should expect to see all different types of people on here in the future, and that's just how that's how it's gonna roll. What did someone say? Someone is Father Gregory said something. Let me see. Someone is seconding it, so I should. Yes, I don't disavow people for no reason. Father Gregory is right. Oh yeah, Father Gregory says we can be combative without it coming from a place of pure hate. That's right. You can be. I think that's a good way to put it. I do appreciate that. And thank you for appreciating me and my fed glory, as you say. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I was saying when I was talking to MK about the chat, when I was describing you all. I know that some of you, like the people who watch my stuff and comment in the chat all the time, you've all come from different places. And it's kind of fascinating that it even works at all. Like some of you know me only because of my stream with Kantbot, but you've stayed and you kind of hang out in these other things that I do, even though it's not exactly your cup of tea. The fact that you stay and you're interested, I do appreciate that. That's interesting of you, and that's open-minded of you, and that's keeping an open and respectful mind towards me, and I appreciate that. And if you want to kind of talk shit on some of the things I do that are not your favorite, that's fine. That's fair play. That's like that's part of this weird, wild reality we have on YouTube and on the internet, where like it's kind of a community in the sense that like similar people come back each time, and I know certain names in the chat and I can kind of remember things they said in previous chats. And you obviously, by watching more than one thing of mine, you kind of get a sense of who I am. And so in that obvious sense, there is kind of a community, but it's also it's wild. It's really, really wild. And what's cool is that I'm not famous enough that the chat is like hyper active. The chat is slow enough that I actually do see most of it. And so that's like, I think that I have a kind of unique position and offering on YouTube right now for this reason, that it's like it's still at a kind of human scale. And it's like I hardly know any of you, but and I, you probably don't agree with half the things I think, and I don't agree with half the things you all think. And maybe, as I'm quite sure some of you probably think things that I find deeply unconscionable, perhaps, and probably you also think maybe some of the things I think are deeply unconscionable, but it's this kind of wild zone where like I don't really mind you hanging around, and you don't mind paying attention to my stuff, even the stuff that's not your cup of tea. And yeah, that's just, it's wild, and it just feels very, it feels very real, and I appreciate that about you all. And I'm glad that you appreciate it about me enough to watch my shit. Yeah, definitely. Let me. Someone said, rule number one, be good to your chat. And I want to appreciate all the people who pay attention to my work, no doubt. But, there is also a major risk of becoming hostage to your audience. It's actually like as serious a risk and as serious a problem for an internet intellectual as any other problem, really. In fact, it's probably the most important and most common and severe failure mode for internet intellectuals. Like in academia, I am, an academic researcher is basically totally cucked by the research grant system and political correctness and all of that sort of stuff. But you can go on the internet and be radically free, especially if you develop an audience that likes your work. But then the countervailing risk there is that you get cucked by your own audience. It happens. I mean, it really does happen, and it's a real psychological tendency because we're very social creatures and we respond very strongly to feedback. And so, in my view, like I appreciate you all, no doubt, and I try to maintain a balanced viewpoint towards my own beliefs and my own interests and the input I hear from you all. I try to respect your input and I try to take it seriously, but I also need to actively not allow myself to become emotionally beholden to it. So I'm sure you appreciate that. I'm sure you understand that, because ultimately, if I did that, if I allowed myself to kind of like put your viewpoints first, if I cared so much about making you all happy that was my main priority, I would actually become an annoying, groveling beta bro that would be quite undesirable to listen to and to watch. So if I ever seem like I'm being cold to you guys, or if I'm talking shit about you guys, or perhaps reflecting on the chat in ways that are highly critical at times, if I don't think I ever really even have been too critical, to be honest, but if I am ever like that, it's because I'm trying to actively create a kind of balanced based intellectual detachment. So yeah, I'm glad to talk about that for a little bit, because it's good to reflect on that and be transparent about that. So long as you don't block, we will continue to try. When you block, we will leave. Yeah, I mean, I've never blocked anyone on YouTube. I just don't. As I said, I really am kind of a free speech absolutist, and two, I also just don't have the time and energy to like be monitoring all that. So, yeah. Let's see. Were there any other questions or anything? All right, folks. I think this is a natural pause in the conversation to call it a night. So yeah, as I said, I just did my first seminars on Patreon. So for all of my patrons beyond a certain level, this week was the first week that we did a private kind of 2-hour session, or it was a little bit less because the groups were smaller. But yeah, we had a kind of private graduate school level seminar basically, and it was fun. I have to say, I think it went really well. I thought it was productive, and it was really interesting to hear about your projects. And yeah, and then I kind of gave just honest but constructive feedback about, next steps that I think the people might want to take. And yeah, people seem to find it useful. I found it fun, and definitely it felt worthwhile. So yeah, we'll be doing that once a month. If it's something you're interested in, yeah, check it out. But I just want to share that we did that for the first time this weekend. I was quite happy with it. I also said in the beginning, I have some blog posts coming out about this data set that I've got my hands on. This data set looking at, it's like hundreds of questions about the attitudes and behaviors of university students today, conducted by a company called College Pulse. So it's a real gold mine of information, and I have some, I think, really quite fascinating and unique data analyses planned that on questions that like we have not really seen much research on, because we haven't really had that much data. And this is a pretty unique and valuable data source. So I'm very privileged and grateful to have advanced access to it. So yeah, and they told me I can blog it all that I want. So I just have to give, credit to them. And I'm not allowed to share the data itself, but the data analyses will be, I think quite transparent. So, I'll give you a good sense of how I'm making the conclusions that I'm making. But I've already have some really interesting insights. Like, for instance, I'll give you one real quick. I have to check it. I'm not like sure about this yet, but hey, job haver, what's up? I just did one today. I'm going to publish this soon. I have to check it. I'm not sure that it's correct, but job haver and I have basically absolutely opposing or opposite policies towards our audience. She's brutally dominating, and I'm, not. But yeah, so what I looked at today was the relationship between IQ and political correctness among university students. Not technically IQ. I looked at like basically grade performance, so GPA in other words. And if you look at the relationship between the GPA of university students and their views towards political correctness, it's very interesting. And it's basically something that I hypothesized. I've been hypothesizing for a little while, but I'm going to write a blog post showing this. But I'll give you a sneak peek. I'll give you the a secret preview basically of the main finding before it drops. And it's basically this is what it looks like, unless I'm missing something, which I'm going to check. But I think what's going on is, oh yeah, so what exactly does PC mean in this context? The measurement of PC in this particular data analysis that I'm doing is they give someone a hypothetical question. They give the students a hypothetical question. They say, imagine that on your university campus, a group tried to physically prevent some controversial speaker from speaking. Would you support that group that's trying to physically stop the controversial speaker from speaking? That's basically the question. And so that's, there's no measure that's perfect, right? But that's one way to measure political correctness, basically. And well, so that's one variable. And then the other variable I'm looking at just for this one analysis, there's so many other I want to do with this amazing data. By the way, for these questions, I have something like 20,000 observations, 20,000 people in this analysis. I then also look at their GPA, right? It doesn't depend on the speaker because the question is phrased in such a way that it can be, it's just a hypothetical. It could be any speaker in general. Do you support the idea of physically stopping an unconscionable speaker or whatever? And then I correlate that with GPA, and the result is very fascinating because it looks like it's a pretty strong and clear result, but it's a little counterintuitive. I believe I believe that there's a curvilinear relationship between GPA and political correctness, and curvilinear in the following way: basically a nonlinear relationship, meaning that I believe people with the highest GPAs are generally less politically correct. They're cool with, controversial speakers speaking. And then people with the lowest GPAs are also cool with controversial people speaking. But the people in the middle with kind of middling GPAs, those people are the ones who are most likely to be the kind of politically correct SJW types. And that's very, very fascinating because that's basically consistent with a hypothesis that I've floated in writing before. And my book is basically talks a lot about this, which is that for a lot of people, the SJW tactic is, I believe, it's for people who are really close to being able to succeed through kind of organic open competition, but then they're not really able to crack that kind of top level. But because they're really still quite smart, they're smart enough to basically fuck with the system, fuck with the rules, basically, to get what they want. They're just not quite smart enough to win through kind of organic competition. So I think there's something like that going on. I've long thought that there's something like that going on, but we've never really had like highly refined data to show it. And so this, this is not exactly, it's not a proof of it or anything like that, but I think it's consistent with that hypothesis that, because basically the key bit of background for this is that, we do live in a kind of increasingly winner takes all economy where almost all of the rewards go to the people who are absolutely dominant in any particular domain, basically. And so, if you're super smart, you can do increasingly well, and however, if you're at all, even a few notches down from the very top, you're going to have a hard time really succeeding. And, at least in the way that your expectations are aligned to, in the way that you think befits you. And so because it's kind of baked into the nature of kind of digital global, information capitalism, this kind of winner take all phenomena that you see kind of in many sectors. You kind of see it all over the place. Because of that, I think what you could reasonably predict is that in all domains, it's the people who are really smart, they're really capable, and 10 years ago they would have been able to do just fine. But now, they're really smart, they're not really able to win the games. They're not able to get that winner take all position. And naturally, quite rationally, they're fucking pissed. They don't want to just go along with that. They're not going to submit to being a loser, in other words. And they're smart enough to do a lot of damage. They're smart enough to try to reshape the culture in a way that suits them and promotes their interests. But if they can't do it on the plane of open competition, then they're going to do it basically through what the SJW does, which is basically trying to rewrite moral and ethical rules to handicap the people that are kind of most effective in different domains, and to promote, kind of bureaucratic, moralistic types of, traits that they're kind of able to have a comparative advantage in. And so, yeah, obviously this one little data analysis that I'm talking about doesn't prove all of these things by any stretch. But it was just one quite striking little bit of data insight that I got just today, in fact. So I'll be posting that in the next few days, and I plan on doing a whole lot of data analyses with this College Pulse data, because it's there's so many other interesting and unique questions that I'll be able to get some headway on that we haven't really been able to in the recent past, because we haven't had the data. So Job Haver says that she's not actually listening to this. She just wanted to tell you guys that you're all very easily trolled. Well, I wonder if Job Haver is trying to troll me, because look, I try to take everyone at their word. I'm kind of I will just ask people what they think, and I'll, I like to be almost purposefully naive a little bit. I don't care if people lie to me. I don't care if people are, hamming it up or, they're trying to get a laugh on me or whatever. At least in this podcast, you know, for this kind of format in these live streams, you know, you never know what type of person you're going to get. You know, you never know. And I just try to listen. I try to have an open mind, and you know, it was like kind of like with Kantbot. Like Kantbot was obviously kind of trolling. You know, he's obviously playing some kind of performative game, but I don't know. You know, you don't really know, and you gotta let people play their game. And I like to just give people a space to play their game. Like if MK was trolling me, for instance, maybe, I don't know. It's okay. I'm happy to give people a unrestricted, you know, 2-hour slot to basically give me whatever kind of performance they want to give me. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So, all right, folks. I think my brain is about emptied of any valuable contents it has for today. And I'm sure I've also emptied it of many non-valuable contents. So thank you for hanging with me, folks. As always, I'm grateful for your attention. Big thanks to my patrons, as always. Super grateful. And yeah, if you want to get in on the Discord server, just shoot me a message on the DM. That's all there is to it. Sam says it was very concordant with his experience, what I was saying about SGWs. Yeah, well, I have some pretty comprehensive data now, so we'll see. All right, everyone. Thanks again. If you haven't done so already, you know the drill. Subscribe, like the video. Oh, and also share this with your friends. You know, if you're into what I'm doing, like tell some people that you know that I'm doing something cool, and send them links and stuff like that. I'd appreciate that. All right. See you later, folks.